That was a really good intro until the last second when the visual effects plugins all switched off at the same time. It's like when you hit your pedal too early and it goes... You want to mute the strings on the very last half beat or even quarter beat before it comes in and press the pedal on exactly the same time. Hide it behind whatever the drums are doing if you can. One more time from the top. Better. Sounds even more like Radiohead now. But there's still room for improvement. Man, I'm still trying to get through this list thing and in the right order, and it's distracting me from all the other news. Washington, D.C. got hit by a bunch of violent anarcho-communists during the inauguration, and then Berkeley College got hit by another bunch of violent anarcho-communists. And instead of covering that, I'm stuck talking to this dude about God knows what.
I think some of my earlier videos have made it relatively clear what sorts of beliefs I hold. Also, especially for any of you who aren't anarchists, I hope you can at least understand where I and the larger anarchist movement are coming from, even if you aren't 100% on my side.
That's an anarcho-communist flag, because of the red. Even most of the anarchists listening to you probably aren't even 50% on your side.
This might not be the most entertaining video I've ever made, but I hope it's at least informative.
Well, the information we've so far gathered from you is anarcho-communists think their kind of anarchism is the only kind of anarchism. And as it happens, even a lot of people who don't identify as anarchists or know anything about anarchists think anarcho-communism is the only kind of anarchism. Because they see that flag and they think it is the anarchist flag. There are many kinds of anarchism, which itself is pretty strange, and they've all been racing to get their flag to the top of the hill first. And the anarcho-communists have won. Partly through the cunning use of turning half the flags upside down and pretending to be two different teams. But it makes sense that the communists would prevail in the field of anarchy within a capitalist society. Well, and anywhere, given that communism almost invariably and inexorably leads to anarchy. But not the kind of utopian anarchy that any of you are talking about. I mean, failed state kind of anarchy. I'm sure a long time ago, in a galaxy far away, maybe we could have a sensible conversation about anarchy. But right here, right now, we're surrounded by far too many wankers.
What is anarchism? If we're to take the mainstream perception of anarchism, or more commonly, anarchy, at its word, then it's chaos, bomb-throwing mayhem, disorder, and immorality. In reality, this is the exact opposite of what anarchism seeks to achieve.
Oh, really? Thom uploaded his video in early December, and this all happened in the current year, so it's not so much a case of blatant ignorance as it is unfortunate timing.
Fuck white supremacy. Fuck Milo. Fuck your neo-Nazi bullshit.
Fuck off, you fascist pig! I'll take you fucking down. Yeah.
6:30.
What you doing with this, man? What you doing with that?
I'm
Can
sorry?
I have it?
No, you cannot have
Then
it.
stop filming fucking people's faces. I see you being all sneaky. You look like a fucking Nazi. Turn that shit off.
This is a public forum.
Turn
okay?
that shit off.
I don't have to listen to you. I can leave it on if I want.
Okay, I'll tell my homies.
You get the idea. Wrong, Thom. Thoroughly wrong. At least I've come to acquire a considerable degree of evidence that anarchists are indeed everything the stereotype makes them out to be and more. It's just that they only become anarchists in the event of them not getting the government they want. They were Democrats right up until November the 9th, and now they're anarchists. What I just displayed, Tom, was some empirical data, some objective audiovisual evidence of what anarchists are doing. Now that we're in the realm of practice, there's no need to waste time and overcomplicate things with detached theoretical idealism. Would you agree?
Anarchism is the belief that social hierarchy, a system which ranks people above one another in terms of authority, status, and power, does not justify itself. Unless a given hierarchy can be justified, usually by whoever is holding more authority, then it is illegitimate. It should be dismantled and replaced with a more equitable relationship.
You had one job.
In simpler terms, the burden of proof lies on those who exercise authority to justify that authority.
Unless it's you exercising the authority, or people who think just like you. You don't have to justify anything you say or do, because you don't believe in hierarchies. Apart from the one where anarchism is better than all the other isms, and anarcho-communism is the best kind of the anarchisms. And it's just possible that your personal, individual kind of anarcho-communism is the best one of those.
This is not to say that anarchists reject all forms of authority. Rather, we reject coercive authority.
Let me guess. Capitalism coerces people, and communism does not. Depending on what kind of anarchism you believe in. It all seems pointless, Tom. Do you see what I mean? I mean, it's literally arguing about nothing. For real nothing. Literally nothing.
Coercive authority. Coercive authority. We reject coercive authority.
You look like a fucking Nazi.
I'm faced with 15 minutes of this, and I'm finding colourful ways to skip large sections.
When I'm asked about my political beliefs, I usually say that I'm a social anarchist or an anarcho-syndicalist, with some level of sympathy for anarcho-pacifism.
Ah, see, there it is again. Hudna. We're sympathetic to pacifism when it suits us. And we're sympathetic to sucker punching people in the face when it suits us. I noticed you displayed the anarcho-pacifist flag there, so you're aware of the flag dilemma. It's not a coincidence that anarcho-communists and anarcho-syndicalists have the same coloured flag. Anarcho-syndicalists are simply anarcho-communists who figured out that calling it communism really rubs a lot of people the wrong way. So they call themselves something else, but they are very much communists. Which you can find out just by listening to them.
Again, it was only much later, and with the help of some good old-fashioned propaganda, that socialism was more associated with the absence of liberty and freedom.
See, communism's not a problem. Anti-communism is a problem. Yeah, at least communism wouldn't be a problem were it not for all these filthy anti-communists. But let's hear what you secretly meant, and not very secretly, when you said anti-communist. I mean, you were practically daring me to unravel it.
With the help of some good old-fashioned United States propaganda.
I see. I've unraveled the dilemma, and I'm left with an enigma. If it is so, Tom, that the McCarthy era was the result of a right-wing authority getting out of hand, then what might it look or sound like when a left-wing authority gets out of hand? People running around saying, "Are you or have you ever been a Nazi?" to people they've already shot? Something like that?
So now that we know some of the basic premises of anarchism, let's look at how these premises combine to form a cohesive political viewpoint.
Precious.
Part 2. What are the unifying beliefs of anarchists? The two most important hierarchies which anarchists oppose are capitalism and the state.
The state, yes, by definition, but capitalism? Is there anyone you're neglecting to factor in there?
Anarcho-capitalists.
Which could simply describe an anarchist who thinks communism is even worse than capitalism. Which makes perfect sense to me, even if anarchy doesn't.
You may run across anarcho-capitalists in your adventures on the internet, but they're generally frowned upon by anti-capitalist anarchists.
You don't say.
Capitalists, they're generally frowned upon by anti-capitalists.
Fascinating.
Anarcho-capitalism is a right-wing ideology that bears little resemblance to anarchism historically.
So it doesn't resemble any of history's successful anarchist regimes.
It's basically just right-wing libertarianism, except with a particular focus on the state and even more co-opting of leftist terminology.
I'm developing the suspicion, Mr. Avella, that I'm not getting an entirely unbiased presentation from you here.
Capitalism and anarchism cannot coexist.
Anarchism can't coexist with any other ism. That's what anarchism is, in theory. And communism can't coexist with any other ism. That's what communism is in practice. I've no idea what label to put on myself when it comes to this shit, but one thing I'll say capitalism has going for it is it has quite a track record for coexisting with other isms. Case in point, we live in a capitalist society, and it has spawned at least 6 different kinds of anarchism, and is coexisting with them all. Do you know how many different kinds of anarchy they have in a communist society? 1. The one you like. Yeah, the red kind. And just like you, they only adopt it temporarily whenever they're not getting what they want. When capitalism is winning, you're an anarcho-communist. When communism is winning, you mysteriously become just a communist.
For an anarchist to support capitalism is like a fish trying to breathe air.
You mean like a mud skipper?
If anarcho-capitalism was ever to be put into practice, which, unlike social anarchism, it hasn't.
Yeah, 0 attempted goals and 0 goals versus 46 shots on goal and 100 million dead people.
It would amount to little more than feudalism with bitcoins.
Okay, what's wrong with that is not a stupid question. I mean, it's elements of the future combined with elements of the past. That might work well and it might work horribly. But one thing you can say is it's neither regressive nor progressive. It's a balance. Now, I don't know crap about Bitcoin and I've never lived in a feudal system, and that is why, Tom, I'm going to need slightly more information than just, herder, this must be dumb. There's no point in trying it because no one's ever tried it before. By the way, I know communism has resulted in death and desolation every single time, but my specific kind of communism has never been tried before, and that's why we should try it. With herp derp here and herp derp there.
Capitalism and anarchism cannot coexist. Let's talk about gender inequality.
Oh, I'm saying it.
Part 3. Feminism as a component of anarchism.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Also commonly opposed by anarchists.
But
Anarcho-feminists. They're generally frowned upon by anti-feminist anarchists.
Airtight reasoning, I'm sure you'll agree.
Patriarchy. Patriarchy is a hierarchy which places men in a position of authority above women. It's commonplace everywhere from the theocratic Middle East to even the developed Western world. Hierarchies based on something like gender are self-refuting, 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 since I believe strongly that anarchism requires feminism and should just be an assumed thing. An assumed thing. An assumed self-refuting thing. There are certainly people in this movement who don't believe patriarchy exists and that feminism is unnecessary or even detrimental to society, but these people are usually viewed unfavorably among anarchists.
It happened again. Anarchism is incompatible with capitalists, and it is incompatible with non-feminists. There are many anarchists who disagree with me about this, but I think I can speak for anarchists when I say they're all wrong.
We commonly refer to them jokingly as manarchists or brocialists.
Awesome! Well, that's that problem solved. You called them some names and excluded them from your club. Let's read that last thing again.
We commonly refer to them jokingly as manarchists or brocialists. Self-refuting, self-refuting. Generally, we don't like TERFs, self-refuting. SWERFs, self-refuting. White feminists, self-refuting. Or upper-class feminists very much.
Do you know what you can do? Instead of trying to figure out which feminisms to drop and which feminisms to keep, you can just drop all of them. Just drop feminism. I mean, it keeps mutating into new strains of unbearable sickness. Why do you keep holding on to it? Like this time it's going to puke something healthy. You just gave us a handful of examples. Feminists got it wrong about class, feminists got it wrong about race, feminists got it wrong about sex workers, and feminists got it wrong about transsexuals. And yet you keep clinging to feminism like it's ever been right about a fucking thing. And even though feminism has been wrong about everything else, it's never occurred to you that it might also be wrong about men and women. And has been all along. Holy shit, dude. I thought at first you were just an anarcho-communist describing anarchism in a way that's completely biased towards communism, but at least consistent in its bias. But now you're falling off two different edges at the same time. Feminism is a hierarchical system that definitely exists. Patriarchy is an imaginary hierarchy dreamed up by feminists. In reality, women have more rights than men, more privileges than men, more opportunities than men, and more choices than men. And yet you remain convinced, by no solid evidence at all, that the opposite of this is the case. Women are the ones who do not have to work, because they have the privilege of not working. Men are the ones who have to work, because they do not have that privilege. This transcends race and even class. A woman in need, especially with child, is given a home and a wage by the state. A man in need, especially with child, is ordered to earn a home and a wage by the state. Despite women being the only ones who have 12 different kinds of birth control, all supplied lovingly and free of charge by the state. And yet you look at that, and you see men as the bourgeoisie and women as the proletariat. See, I don't even need to talk about communism. I don't even need to go to communism's house. I'm talking about your bizarro upside-down land version of communism, where the bourgeoisie is the proletariat and vice versa. Where you steal from the poor and give to the rich, where you redistribute the wealth and the resources from those who have none to those who have it all at their disposal already. Although maybe this is why communism never works, because that in practice that is the only kind of communism, the kind that bends its own rules back on itself, the
self-refuting
kind. In practice, the role of the heroic proletariat is to be played by whoever can afford to distribute the most compelling propaganda. And the role of the insidious parasitic bourgeoisie is to be played by whoever is most powerless against such propaganda. It's a model that turns upside down as soon as it starts filling up. Like, the only analogy I can think of is one of those drinking birds. You put it on the side of a glass and it appears to drink perpetually. It works because of an actually rather fascinating chemical mechanism for which no one has ever found a practical application, except for making a toy bird appear to drink water. Oh, and governing large civilizations.
So, does anarchism seem as bad as you thought coming in?
Worse, much. Although I learned that basically anarchists are having the same conversation as everyone else. This is left versus right, capitalism versus communism, libertarian versus authoritarian. They're talking about all the same shit, just under the guise of anarchy, under the proviso that one day none of this is going to matter. It's like a battle of artillery, but instead of using mortars, they're just firing pies into the sky to see who can fire their pie highest into the sky. And that sounds harmless, until it isn't. Yeah, pie on the head. Because try as we might, we still can't launch pies all the way into space, and you wouldn't want to. You don't want crumbs and flakes and zero gravity as bad news Berenstains. What the hell was that? Ah, shut up, all of you.
I certainly hope not.
Why would I care what you hope I think? I don't even know how rhetorical that question was.
If you're still not convinced, maybe this'll do the trick. Conclusion. Socialism and anarchism aren't dirty words.
Unlike...
Anarchists or brocialists.
Or...
Capitalists.
Where in the lake of shit do you get off telling people what are not dirty words when you've already told us what are dirty words? Who put you in charge of identifying words or dirt or word dirt?
And even the most noteworthy people in today's online anti-feminist movement who aren't blatant sexists only seem interested in patting each other on the back for sharing a hatred of regressives, and they seem to either not give a shit about or actively partake in and encourage the constant dogpiling and harassing of people who disagree with them.
You're gonna make me play some old shit again, aren't you?
You look like a fucking Nazi.
Kind of assembly.
Good. Fuck him.
Assembly.
If something shitty happens to a shitty person, I'm not going to pretend that they're not a shitty person.
The ever-growing neo-Nazi movement who calls themselves the alt-right.
And so if occasionally you have to clump one of them around the fucking head to make them know that they're not going to be unopposed. Men are happy to cede that power in the short term for the potential of maybe getting their end away on the basis that if ultimately she goes too far, you could fucking knock her out.
So I have no moral obligation to defend, to empathize with that person.
Knock her out.
I'm not crying over violent people who get punched.
There's so much damn fun to smack around.
Now is the time to put aside grievances about personal issues and fight the fascists.
Coercive authority.
If we can figure out who they are, we don't want to punch the wrong people.
But it should just be an assumed thing. But an assumed thing. But an assumed thing.
See, I think anarchism has the same problem as atheism. And to some extent MGTOW. These are essentially anti-movement movements. Assemblies in the name of disassembly. Not inherently, but they all feature that pit trap down and for which so many fall. Like, if you're going your own way, then you don't need a particular label and a particular online club to confirm it, do you? That if you're an atheist, then you shouldn't need to be called one, any more than you should need to be called a non-astrologist. If someone says to you, "What are you, an anti-zodiacist? Don't you believe in anything?" Your first and foremost response to that should be, "I'm not falling for your identitarian trickery. What I am is not a noun chosen by you. What I am is unconvinced by the pseudoscientific practices of astrologists, theologians, and feminists. And none of these things makes me a noun. At least I do not accept any name you might call me for being unconvinced by any of these things. Unless the name in question does nothing but describe a verb that I do. And then I might think about carrying such a label in my pocket and perhaps wearing it on my sleeve for special occasions. And if you're an anarchist, then what I'd like to see from you is some solid work towards building a new system from the ground up, philosophically and preferably physically, rather than simply tearing down the old system and taking its place. It's just that this keeps happening. A bunch of anarchists march into the Capitol saying, "Down with rules, down with leaders, we want a society with no leaders and no rules." And then they overthrow the dictator, hang him in the town square, and then sit on his throne for 5 seconds before going, "Oh shit, we're in charge now. Well, let's go about laying down some rules." See, they call it a power vacuum for a reason. You can't just fire a shotgun at a waterfall and expect there to be a hole. You need shelter from the storm. In a world of steel-eyed death and men who are fighting to be warm. Come in, she said, "I'll give you that." They probably can't complete the line without owing Bob Dylan royalties. Oh, you ever get the feeling everything's been said? Goob die and Furkite.
Good old-fashioned United States propaganda, self-refuting, United States propaganda,